Welcome everybody to our landmark 125th episode under Trends Literature series. It is an absolute honor to host Sanjay Jha for the second time on our platform today. He is the former national spokesperson of the Congress Party and the best-selling author of the book The Great Unraveling, India After 2014, and the Superstar Syndrome, Making of a Champion. An executive director with Dale Carnegie, a regular contributor as a political analyst, and quite a well-known face on Indian TV. We are so honored to have you today, sir.
Thank you very much, Dia. Thank you very much, Neeta. It's wonderful to be back here again. Yeah.
It is our pleasure. Before we continue, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, Trends Literature Series, and press the bell icon to continue receiving the notifications on our latest conversations and interactions. This will help you get insights into the writing process and the book straight from the author.
Sanjay ji, welcome from my side too. Again, such a pleasure, I would say a privilege to have you with us and you taking us time for us. And, we have in our journey leading to our 125th episodes, we've had various historians, politicians, but I must say never before a politician who's written such a fantastic, emotional, empathetic book, An Illegitimate Son. This is, as I've already informed people, it's about from the perspective of Louis Jha, the most adorable mini Dachshund. Truly, your book, Sanjay ji, is an emotional coaster ride, a story of heart-wrenching puppy love, laughter, and tears. Dogs indeed are lovely four-legged animals, bringing in boundless energy and unconditional love into our lives. A very, very unique perspective of handling the story, I must say, Sanjay ji. So how did you think about writing this wonderful book? I mean, we have to know about this because it's been uniquely written from the perspective, from the side of Louis.
Well, thank you very much first. And I want to tell you that, I don't want to take it away, let people discover what the book is about and how it ends. But around the time of June 2021, when the book actually reaches its, I would call it as a very dramatic end. It was a phase where I was feeling extremely, to be honest with you, fairly devastated. And there was a period when the second wave of the pandemic had just about peaked and receded. And I was battling with my own demons in my head. And there was a phase, where my family was also away in different places. And I happened to be in Pune, where, I grew up in that city. And that's where the story is largely played out in its end. And I happened to be there, and I was all by myself, and all I could do was read and write and read and write. And because I was, I think, all by myself, I was just flooded by memories. And I just told myself, hang on, this is a fascinating life. It's not an ordinary life. And I think whenever something happens in somebody's life which is unnatural, I think it just requires a greater degree of empathy, pain, and suffering from everybody involved. And I've always felt, and I'm saying that to both Neeta and to you, Dia, because you are probably, I can understand, we are all different generations in a way. But I don't think as people, we talk about grief as much as we should. I'm an MBA from a pretty well-known institution, but we were taught how to speak well, look good, be smart, be a go-getter, become the CEO of a company. You're told to be successful all the time. You're told about how to basically, become a superstar, make a lot of money, become famous, become powerful. No one ever actually tells you about how to handle losses. Even families don't talk about issues of grief, of death, of loneliness, of separation. We don't ever talk about that because they are hard, they are unpleasant, but yet they're real. And I thought, with the kind of feelings I was very overwhelmed by, I thought, let me just put it down. And my assumption has always been that all of us are very similar in many ways. We look different. We may have different cultures, different passions and prejudices, but at the core, we are human beings. And I think it's good to embrace your vulnerability, good to accept what sometimes life throws at you. And that's why I wrote the book, which frankly speaking was written in 6 weeks. It's not a long book, it's around 45,000 words, written in 6 weeks non-stop. Of course, later on, I took some time over the illustration that Bhavya did for me. But yeah, the book was written in 6 weeks in a period of extreme loneliness. Yeah.
Sanjay Ji, as pet parents, when we went through the book, it was, I would say, in parts, very, very difficult to go through. You know, you relate to whatever you've written so well. Anyone who's had a pet, whether it's been a cat or a dog or any animal, one knows the pain that you would have gone through. And we were really high on emotions when we were going through your book. So what was your, how were your emotions? I mean, you've written this book in 6 weeks. I know, I thought maybe you took a longer time, but yes, maybe you had so much inside you that it didn't take you long before you could put everything together. So what were your emotions while you were writing this book? And as a politician, at any point of time, did you feel that you could give out so much of emotions out there, open in the public? Did you ever think about that? I know whosoever reads this book, it's like, now I know you because this is our second session. This is you, I'm sure, out there. I mean, you are, you've come out as a person that you are. So, but were you apprehensive at some point of time, giving out so much of your vulnerable self?
Neeta, I think that's a very pertinent and I think a very relevant question. My firm belief is that we are not macho or muscular or more man because we don't cry. Can I be honest with you? Every time I watch the Shawshank Redemption or I watch Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, I still get very emotional by the end. And I think it's so natural to get emotionally kind of entangled with feelings that you don't control. I think as human beings, we are eventually creatures of our emotions. We are not creatures of logic. We don't do everything which is irrational. In fact, the most powerful, shall we say, sentiment of human beings is love. And you'll find love itself is so irrational. Why do two people in a world of 8 billion meet and fall in love? How do you define that chemistry? It's bizarre, right? It's bizarre how two people meet at an airport or they become friends in different places. And suddenly there's a love story. So I do feel that somewhere down the line, I may be in politics. I discuss very hard stuff on primetime television every day. It's about economic data, or it's about some law or policy or a social development or communal or social polarization. There's all kinds of stuff. You know what politics is all about. I don't want to even go down that road today. But you're right. I feel that at the end of the day, I mean, there is a lot more to politicians in public life than what you see. I always feel that there's a lot more to each and every person than what you see. We are all multiple shades. We are all layers that very often are not visible to the naked eye. So yeah, I do feel that, in expressing myself the way I have, and I've been public with my feelings here, it's a story of the protagonist as well as my own family, my wife and my 2 girls, who I think went through great highs and, I must admit, great lows. But that's life, right? I mean, life, we laugh and we cry too. I mean, there's no escaping that reality. As far as the how did I write the parts? I mean, I must be honest with you. I mean, I remember there was this one chapter I write, and I don't want to name which one it is, but one where, the hero is talking about the soulmates forever. And there is an accident that happens. And when I was writing that, and I want to be, I wrote that, and it was very hard because when you write about something that was traumatic, both for the protagonist as well as for the writer of the book, you kind of you kind of feel the visceral turbulence within you. When I was writing it, I actually had to take a deep pause because I felt I was losing a little bit of my breath because it was so overwhelming. And much later, I remember that night, I reflected on writing that, and I said, thank God I kind of managed to complete that chapter. But just as an aside, I remember during that phase, it was an evening, and I was doing a show on Times Now where I go pretty often. And Rahul Shivshankar, who happens to be the anchor of the 8 p.m. show, asked me a question. And I don't know what even the subject was. And I can tell you very honestly, I had no idea what he asked, because suddenly my mind had drifted to, my boy. And I was so kind of engulfed or swept away by the sentiments that, were totally overpowering, that I had no idea what he asked me. And I remember just kind of clearing my head and saying, could you repeat that? I didn't hear you. And then getting back into the act. So I just feel somewhere down the line, it wasn't an easy write, I do admit. When you read the last page and the last paragraph
Yes.
where I write about how the book eventually began, I guess it was all just somewhere down the line predestined in a way. So I'm totally anti-superstitious. I'm a very modern, progressive, and shall we say, extremely liberal guy. But sometimes when you look back at life, you sometimes do wonder whether, things like destiny do have a much bigger role to play in our lives than we actually imagine it to be.
You're so right about it. And I would say that, what also makes this book very unique is your writing style, definitely. You've got into the shoes of Louis and you've written this book. I'm sure it must have been very hard for you to do that, to actually get into it, how he feels. And there's so many parts of it. And, suddenly after reading the book, I've understood my pet even better. This is the first time I kept, I'm a proud parent of Ollie. And I feel that, through your book, I'm understanding him more. So how did this idea of yours come in? I mean, you've written it beautifully. The language is most awesome. Very, very prolific, very lovely words. Intense sentences. But yes, you've written through you got into his shoes and written this book. So how did this idea come in?
I think partly, I guess, because of the way I grew up. I remember, Neeta, when I was growing up, we always had dogs in our family. And what I discovered was that, and when you're kids, you play with them. They're just like buddies, they're companions, they're people you fool around with. And just, you come back from school and, you're running all over the place, you're chasing balls, and it's fun. As you grow older, you realize, hang on, but, they're family. I mean, there's much more to those four-legged things with a tail, that just kind of is there with you for 12, 15 years of life. They move on. But I just felt that they were, I think that's a relationship that's so hard to define. And I think someone told me that they're like children who never grow up, right? And what do you do? What do you do? I mean, what do you do when you get that undisguised love coming at you 24/7? In fact, someone asked me recently to do a little write-up on the book, and I've done it for a publication. But let me share with you what I have actually said there. I remember in 2014, Congress lost the elections to the BJP pretty badly. The results were like down to 44 seats. And I was in Delhi that afternoon, as a spokesperson of the party. I was there doing press conferences and, doing a lot of TV shows. And it was late in the evening. I returned back home to Mumbai. And by the time I reached home, it was like midnight. And, my wife and everybody opened the door and they realized, hey, Sanjay is down in the dumps right now, and so I came home and the streets were quiet, and it had been a long, hard, difficult day. In politics, you're so out there, and, the moments of exhilaration are good, but, the chips are down, it's hard. And I can tell you it's hard for everybody in politics, whichever political party you come from. And I was sitting there, I was tired. I was exhausted. I was like completely fatigued, and this guy just walks up to me. He plonks himself on my lap. He looks at me as if, what the hell are you cribbing about, bro? Get on with life. I'm there with you. I think you're terrific. You haven't lost. Get up and fight another day. Life moves on. And I love you, man. What are you complaining about? Do you have any reason to complain about life if I love you so much? And you realize, hang on, these are little things that you don't even think of. But I think they bring you down to the reality that uh, of what you call is love that is truly unconditional. Human relationships are so much more complicated. People fall out of love, people get into relationships, people have divorces. What do you do with a dog who just loves you all the time? For them, you're the universe. It starts with you, it ends with you. And I think I mentioned that incident somewhere in a write-up I've done, because I'm so happy to share that with you actually today, because I think somewhere down the line, I grew up with this whole understanding of dogs as human beings, and then as the years rolled by, I realized we have to be so responsible for this relationship. I look back today and I wonder that uh, would I even go on a holiday if I couldn't take him without me? I sometimes wonder, how did I do those trips when he was at home, and wondering when the hell were we coming back? And now I'm thinking, how difficult it is to leave someone behind when you go for a holiday. So I do hope more people adopt dogs and cats, because they're so human. They're like us. They're better in 1,000 ways than what we are, and they become sensitive to them, because they don't tell you that in words, because they can't speak. But they speak with their eyes. They speak in their body language. They speak with the way they just kind of look at you and then leave you alone sometimes. They understand you much more than you think they do. And I think, therefore, they deserve sensitivity. They deserve respect. They deserve our time. So when I read all these articles about stray dogs being treated badly, I think that's something that comes in this book, right? That mental health problems also affect dogs. I know you can tell when someone is depressed because they're lonely. The guy at my home, Pablo, has he's with us, and he's moved on, and I know there are days he's so low, he still sits on the balcony waiting for his friend to come. How do you handle that? Well, that's life.
I totally, as I'm mentioning again and again at the point of being repeated so many times, but I have absolutely loved the book, and especially the letters which Louis writes to each one of you.
Yeah.
And so considerate, how much there is to learn, there's so much to learn from whatever he's written to you, to your daughters, to your wife, to his friend. So what was the most difficult part in the book for you to write?
I think the part that, frankly speaking, was extremely challenging was the part when we realized, hang on, this is nearing the finish line. And I think acceptance of that, I think, just grows you up. So to all young people who are watching this program, to all those who have not yet experienced the loss of a loved one, accepting that reality is going to be the toughest challenge for you. And you can never learn that from a book. You can never learn that from the experience of somebody else. You can never learn that from the experience of my own. Some things are your own. And like, for example, I feel that, which Louis says in the book, that grief has no closure. It only has an endurance. And I think somewhere down the line, we keep talking about moving on. Do you really move on? Can you really overcome it? It stays with you. Like, for example, a couple of weeks ago, it was my mother's death anniversary. And she had died of cancer some time back. And I realized that now, on the day when she's gone, actually, there's no There's no puja or anything that we do. It is not like any special day because she's there with you in a sense, imperceptibly, or she's present somewhere, right? So you think about her at some point every day, not consciously, but subconsciously, or something happens and music plays, or, you don't think about it for 5 days and suddenly, something comes up somewhere. So you realize that. And when you do think about them, you're like, oh my God, I wish she was here. I wish she was around. I wish that hadn't happened. I wish I could have done more. And I think that feeling somewhere, you come to terms with it. You do move on in that sense, that life does make you tough enough to embrace that. It forces you to accept that because you don't have a choice. But in a great number of ways, you really do linger with those memories. And I think memories are what make us what we are. I think memories are much bigger strengths than what we think them to be. And I just feel that, when he writes that when grief checks in, it's like a permanent guest. It's not a paying guest, it's a permanent guest. It stays with you. And I think you have to come to terms with it. You can't run away from that. So whenever, I always keep telling people that whenever you go through a difficult time, and during the pandemic, so many people died for no reason. Yeah, I mean, it was a tragedy, and a human tragedy at a global level, a complete catastrophe. And I just wonder today, I was thinking about it. How do the people who lost their loved ones during the pandemic, how do they come to terms with the fact that today there are vaccines and there is no need for them? The COVID is over. The horrific nightmare is gone. But for many people, life will never be the same again. Because they lost someone to COVID, they lost someone who didn't have oxygen. They had to actually beg to get a parking lot to, get them to depart to the world beyond. So, how do you handle that? I think it's just insane. And I think somewhere down the line, to be honest with you, Neeta, I think it's taken me a long time to come to terms with it. I've done everything normally. Frankly, until I wrote the book, nobody would have known that I've gone through my family actually has gone through a tough time. And because of the simple reason that, you find your peace somewhere by your atonement comes with saying, what can I do to make sure that Louis' memory is, his great life is not just a chapter that lives with me. And I think when I wrote the book, I mean, frankly, I'm beginning to feel a lot more calmer now. I mean, talking to both Dia and you today, or people who have read the book, and I'm very happy people are liking it. But it doesn't matter whether they like it or not. If just people read about it and just kind of learn something from that, I'll be more than happy. But yeah, it does give me a lot more calmness today. And maybe this book is, in my way, my redemption for the things I could have done for him, and hopefully could have done a lot better.
It's an exceptional life book, I must say. Yes, death is actually brutal, as you mentioned in the book. But, the bundle of love which they come into a life, but unfortunately, a short lifespan, they leave quite early. So every dog lover, pet parent will definitely love this book, written with so much of abundance of love and thought, and so very delicately handled. But how was the response of your book, or of your family's response to your book? They were together in this with you.
I think they have. I think they all struggled with it in their own ways. One of my daughters is abroad, and I know how challenging it is when you're not there, when someone you love is battling life and death. For the others, it was. I think it's very difficult, when you see someone who's been a part of your life. And I think what's difficult, especially with dogs and cats, I think is, they're totally dependent on you, and they look for you for everything, right? A bath, food, a walk, and everything. And suddenly, when they are not there, you wake up and you're like, I have nothing to do. I have no one to spoil. I have no one to indulge in. And I think it's a vacuum. It's a humongous vacuum. And I think it's crazy because the memories are so much, because there's so much of physical proximity. It's funny, right? That as human beings, when we grow up And I'm sure now if Dia will say, hey, mom, don't hug me, my friends are around. As your kids become older, you can't hug them as openly. You're not like, you have to be a little less, kind of, the manifestations of love have to become more subdued because the kids become bigger. And yet you find with animals, it's just the other way around. It just becomes more physical. It becomes more crazily intimate. And I think, to that extent, it just creates a completely a hollowness in your life that you couldn't have contemplated. And yet, Neeta and Dia, I need to tell you that there's always two schools of thought between dog parents. And one of them says that, I don't think I can handle this again. So I don't want another dog or a cat in my life. Because the grief is very, very hard, and let's be honest about it, it's tough. um, on the other hand, I also feel that they create so much love in your life. They make you realize how much you're capable of giving, one-sided, literally. That if you don't fill that space, you feel as if you're incomplete in a way. So you want to give that love, and I think it's almost unfair that you don't then get either those who are at home, well, give them that. But even if you had only one and you need to adopt, and it was Indie or whoever you like, get somebody over, you love them, you just feel that there's a continuity to your capacity to love. So I belong to the second school that believes that the loss is irreplaceable, and yet they create new treasury of love in you. The whole vault size increases manifold. You're like a bank. You're like a central bank of love. And what do you do? Are you going to sit and say, no, I don't want to give it to anyone because I can't handle the vacuum? Well, my answer to that is embrace someone else who's going to love you too. And maybe that's the best way to perpetuate a memory and to continue to understand that love in a great number of ways is endless.
Very, very well said. Before Dia takes over, I must say that it's not only about Louis's going away. This book, it's all about his very, very sweet little things that he was doing with Ollie. Such a wonderful equation with the family and the fights, the arguments. It has so many memories already. I mean, so much of laughter, such riot of enjoyment and unbridled love, as you said earlier in the book. So, Dia, you have such fabulous questions. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, I have to ask you about Pablo. How was it for you to forgive Pablo? Louis, he talks, well, you talk in the book about forgiveness so well. Writing this book, has it helped you heal? How did it make you feel about whatever happened with Pablo?
Dia, to be honest, it's always hard. Forgiveness, I always believe, is the attribute of the strong. I think Mahatma Gandhi was so right when he said that everybody can't forgive. You need to have a supernatural strength in you to be able to kind of condone something that went violently wrong. And yet, I think there's no other way that Louis would have liked it, because he himself was so remarkably forgiving. And as Neeta said, the book is actually, it's a funny book. It's for almost 60% of the book you laugh because the journey is indeed insane. I mean, it's funny. I mean, it's true. And in a way, that's life, right? There's so much of fun in our lives. We travel, we do holidays, we celebrate, we have festivals, we have marriages, we have relationships. There's so much to look forward to, and yet the other part is, hang on, nothing in life is permanent. And so the book has kind of helped me heal, and I think I'm now feeling somewhere down the line, as you read the story, I mean, I'm hearing Neeta and you, and I'm feeling that Louis has no idea but the kind of lovely friends he has in you guys and in those who will read it. So it's very, very comforting. And Pablo is forgiven, and he's today, if you look at him, he's like a timid, malleable, tractable kid.
Oh,
He, he every day, and I need to tell you that he sits in the balcony of the house, because Louis used to go for his walks in the garden,
yeah.
and that's especially when he had this paralytic attack, and
Yeah.
so he used to go in the garden to get runs for his legs to heal, and this guy used to watch him from the balcony, and he's never had closure because when you read the book, you realize he never got to know what really happened. He sits in the balcony every day. Every day. When I say it every day, I mean literally every day. And he looks out for 10, 15 minutes at different times of the day. It's not once, at different times of the day. He just does that. And I go to him and I say, hey, you know what? I know you love him and, you're looking around for him, right? I talk to him and he's all ears. And for him, the story is that maybe one day somebody will come back into his life. So, you realize he's, as I write in the book somewhere, that very often we don't realize, but the villain is very often the victim himself. It's very easy to brand somebody as a perpetrator of something wrong. We call him a villain. We say, somebody went rogue. But you go deeper into the character and you realize, I don't think he had any idea of what happened. It's just a momentary burst of madness. And which is the truth of human beings as well, right? And you realize majority of the people, they slip for a brief while, say the wrong things, and then they see a whole relationship unravel.
It's beautiful how much you've understood your animals, every animal, in fact, how you're able to see them as humans. And in fact, when you talk about this, I feel especially touched since I've always had that dream of being able to rescue dogs. That once when I grow up, I will sit in a house with 10 rescue dogs. But I've often always been scared of the emotional baggage that will obviously come with it. And talking to you today, sir, listening to you has truly made me realize, made me remember why I always wanted to do it, the love that comes with it, how much you're able to embrace it. In fact, you've even poured your heart in the epilogue of this book. Your visit to your Pune after 1 month of passing away of Louis, so beautifully written. I could almost feel the presence of Ollie and Louis touches you like no other. So, sir, how does it feel now? Or how has the memories been taken care of ever since you've written this book?
Well, to be very frank, on June 11th, it will be 2 years. And, like there are places in the house I still see him at different times of the day. And and I developed a daily practice actually. It's been there for a long time. I don't think even my family is aware of this, but since we are having such a honest conversation, let me tell you that every night, no matter what time, but when I'm done with the day, when I packed up, the TV show is over, I've watched the IPL match, I may be reading something, I may be watching my Liverpool match at some odd hour of the night. But every time before I go to bed, I always walk up to the balcony of my house, and which has a very open view of the sky, and I say hello to him, and this has become my daily practice. I don't think it's ever going to change wherever I am, and in a great number of ways, it's funny, but I just feel that some relationships just become insanely crazy. I think when he went through that traumatic time of the paralysis, my equation with him changed completely. And and I don't know, I think it just got into some very deep level. And which is why I guess he's very kind to me when he says to me later on that, hey, Beard, you are my Charlie, which he says in the end. And so, yeah, I think I'll be honest, it's 2 years. Hard to believe, actually. Very hard to believe that 2 years is gone. I haven't heard the bark. But there are pictures that come up suddenly, the videos that come up on your Apple phone that remind you of everything. And periodically one of the girls or my wife and everyone, suddenly one fine day, I can sense that they're feeling a little, and they put pictures and they share, and everyone goes, kind of, hey, like, feel, love. And I think it continues. So I think, yeah, it's a journey of life, and it must continue that way. And yeah, I think the most important thing that I feel is a reminder, and that's what I write in the book: learn to forgive. We fight over meaningless things in our life. We burn ourselves out over silly issues, and I just feel that we need to take a breath or a step back and just say, hang on, is it worth why we fight with each other? Is it really worth burning a relationship for? And what do we do that for? And I think one of the simple thumb rules of life is just ask yourself, will it matter 1 week later if the Swiggy order has come late, or your driver is, not turned up for work unannounced, or the cook has messed up the food when the guests are waiting? It's okay. It's not the end of the world. And I think as long as we can just always get some perspective that human beings inherently are good people. Okay, we are all good people. We are all nice people. We all mean well. We may have a different way of thinking at times, but that doesn't mean that we are at war. And I think somewhere down the line, as a politician, that's what I believe in, that, I may be critical of one, but I'll never hate you. Never hate you. I may oppose an X party, but I hate anybody there. Never. I don't believe in that at all. And I may feel that the way to get to X may be via Y. Somebody else feels that the way to get to X is via Z. That's all right. So we can argue our case. We can try and convince people. We don't have to go for each other's throats. And I think as long as we maintain that understanding that humanity and all of us are essentially simple people, that eventually the story ends the same way, ladies and gentlemen, like it or not, I think we'll be fine.
You've given so much of inspiration, motivation, abundance. At the same time, you have let Louis also make fun of you so many times. That is the most, you've been so transparent. You've let him call you names. You've let him get you at the weaker side. You let him, even the incident with the tennis balls. I mean, so as you said, 60%, 65% of this book is all about humor. It's all about life. It's all about how it happens in normally daily lives. But you put it so well because you write so well. So you managed to, it's kind of a diary for you. I mean, you've just let your heart pour out. You've let him make fun of you, and you've also made fun of the entire family. So how did they take that part, about your daughters, everything you've written? You've, in your own way, instructed them about boys. So about your wife, you mentioned from, maybe you've, under the cover of Louis, you've let it be.
Yeah, I think you're right. I honestly believe that, all these guys, they look at us and they have their own opinion, and I can tell you that, there were times he could make out when I was just trying to be clever by half. And when I write that every time I came home looking sad and sorry when I lost my tennis match, and, he would know that, I'm like pissed, or when I hummed a Shah Rukh Khan song because I must have played well. It's so true because, they kind of react to you the way they sense your body language. But yeah, I think, one of the things that I find, Neeta, so important, and Dia, I'll share that with you as well. And this, I'm saying that both as a regular guy as well as a politician as well, we take ourselves so seriously. We don't have to. I think the ability to laugh at yourself, to be self-deprecating, is a sign of maturity. I find people are just so grave about, what will the world think about me? And we're always putting on this little, or rather this big mask all the time. And I'll tell people the COVID is over. Don't wear the mask, be real, be yourself. You are what you are. The more layers you create, you're a different person here, a different person there. Maybe your role requires you to do different things. That's fine. But you can't be fundamentally a different human being. You are what you are. And I think you should never try and compromise on that. Perform your different roles as a spokesperson, me as a spokesperson, as a father, or as a person in my work. I may have a different thing to say or do, but I can't be a different person at all completely. So I think that's something that we need to understand. And I just felt that, every one of us is crazy. I mean, I think we are all very headstrong, independent women. I think I'm very happy that my house is very, the gender diversity empowers women much more. I'm the only guy with Louis and Pablo and Ollie for a while, and and I feel that they're all somewhere down the line in their heart of hearts, coming to terms in their own way. For me, the book has been my atonement or redemption. I think they're finding their peace in their own way. And I think when they read the book, and I think they're all somewhere down the line, I think they will all find themselves at peace here. I think somewhere more difficult maybe to come, because when you read it, maybe it's a little more, it's harder than when you wrote it. But at the same time, I think it's a reconciliation with reality. So they're strong, as I write in the acknowledgement. Hats off to them, because let me say this here, that it took me a little longer time to get back to being as benevolent and loving towards Pablo. I struggled with that a lot more. But I think the three of them, I think they just kind of, got going with him by understanding that, not being nice to him or being indifferent to him was not the answer. And I think that's what you learn. So, I have learned a lot through this, and I feel they're all very strong, very, very brave. And, I just feel they will emerge out of this as good human beings for sure.
In the last, I must mention that, in the letters that he writes to perhaps Mo, one of the best things is that he says that with us dogs, what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And to Missy, I just noted on a few things that I really, and to your wife, he says life is both not fair or easy. And I think to you, the most wonderful letter, I must say, which you should read. I don't want to give it away. People should read the book and find out, and which tells us so much about you and your feelings and relationship with Louis. It's been a wonderful conversation. I mean, thank you so much for being with us today. I mean, it has added value to the reading I did on the book. It's given me so much of perspective. Dia's totally enjoyed the book. Anything that you'd like to say, Dia, before Sanjay Ji tells us his last words?
Thank you, Sanjay Ji, for this book. I believe me, this book gets us going as pet parents stronger and stronger. It is a privilege that you graced our platform today for the second time. And thank you so much. It was a privilege to have you today.
Well, Dia, I'm just going to tell you, do what you wish to do, which is to get all your 10 indies together, and trust me, yeah, I mean, they'll give you such a wonderful experience that you'll discover that joys, happiness, grief, madness, chaos, merriment, celebrations, everything is life. And but don't stop yourself from just because of the anticipation of the inevitable loss should not stop you from living the life that I think you and they deserve to do together. And my last words, therefore, to everyone and to both of you will be the same, and will be that, as he says in the book, the ending of one journey is important for the beginning of another. And that's life. So, every time, when my daughters come, I'm very happy when they come home. When they're leaving, I get the blues. And then I tell myself, hang on, they got to go now, because that's the only way they'll come back again. And you have the thrill of anticipating their return. So I think that's what life is about. The ending of one journey is a must for the beginning of another. And once we understand that, I think we just come to terms with life, and we are smiling and we are getting on with it. And we never forget the beautiful memories of everyone who comes into our space.
Thank you once again. And please keep writing.
Thank you.
Please keep on giving us such beautiful wisdom that you have so much stored inside you. you need to share with us. You need to share with all your readers. We look forward to your further books, and all the best with An Illegitimate Son by Rupa Publications. Amazing. Read. You can.
Thank you. Thank you, Dia. Thank you, Neeta. You've been amazing. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate this wonderfully candid conversation. And I can sense, what I've loved about chatting with both of you about is I know you've read the book and you've felt the way I did. And I think empathizing with a troubled man, in this case, a highly troubled author, I think you make me feel very, very, very good about that. I feel very, very cared for. So thank you very much from Louis and me and my entire family.
Yes,
thank you.
From us and Ollie.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.